These are spicy salsa pickled eggs, and these are barbecue pickled eggs. Today, I'm going to show you the recipe for both. Look at the size difference. One of the wife's co-workers gave us some jars, which was very nice of her. We're gonna clean them out. They've just been sitting in a shed somewhere. We're gonna clean them up. I'll replace the lids with these brand new lids just because I don't know how old they are. But yeah, we're gonna use them. Our chickens, for the most part, lay pretty big eggs. Like there's one or two that lay smaller eggs, but for the most part, they're big and fat. Everyone has a different way to boil eggs, but how I find to do it is you turn the water, you put the eggs in there while it's still cold and let it heat up with the eggs in there. And when the water starts boiling, that's when I start my timer. That helps with cracks and breaks. It helps them to not pop so much. And then you got egg whites all in your water. It still happens sometimes, but it's still good. I also only soft boil the eggs. I leave them in there for about 7 to 8 minutes. I don't do the full 14 because whenever we water bath, that finishes the cooking process. That helps. Only soft boiling the eggs helps with them not being rubbery. Some people don't water bath. There's ways to do this without the water bath. I like to water bath. It's just a matter of preference. That's just the way I like to do it, to make sure that my jars seal. And so far, so good on the eggs not being rubbery. Soft boil the eggs, and then in the water bath, they finish boiling. All right, this are all the ingredients for the spicy salsa pickled eggs. We have it all laid out on this table, everything's prepared, and it's time to make my brine and begin the process. We've got chopped up garlic, bell peppers, and onions, all just completely raw. That's all there is to it. The tomatoes that we just got through spending 30 minutes on, cut up. Sliced fresh jalapeno peppers, the boiled eggs. This is optional. Minced garlic. It's an easier way to get garlic into your pickled eggs. It's optional. This time we're choosing to do both. You can have crushed garlic, chopped up garlic or minced garlic, either one. And these are the seasoning cups. We always like to prepare the seasoning cups beforehand. It just makes it easier. You can just dump it in your jar and be done with it. Inside each of these seasoning cups, this is measured out for a 1 quart jar. It's 3 tablespoons of crushed red pepper, 1 teaspoon of dill weed, half a teaspoon of mustard seed, half a teaspoon of red pepper, 1 teaspoon of onion powder, 1 teaspoon of garlic powder, and 1 teaspoon of iodized salt. That is all there is to it. I'll put a screenshot of I'll put a screenshot of the actual recipe on paper so you can pause the video and write it down yourself if I went too fast. My brine is simple enough. For the spicy salsa, I like to do 50-50 of my vinegar and water. I do 50-50 because that makes the vinegar taste not as strong and in your face, but it's still enough to really pickle them. Dripping it all over the place. All right. That's my clear brine. But we're not done yet. It is thundering outside and I love it. This is entirely optional. If you don't like the dill flavor, then you don't have to add the dill flavor. That's what the dill weed helps with. You don't have to add that if you don't like the dill flavor. But this is what I use in my brine. And it's really strong, but it tastes good. It's good enough. I'll make my own homemade one of these days. For now, this is what I stick with to make my brine, the dill flavor brine. And I don't have any specific measurement for this. I just use, when I make my brine, I just do 50-50 vinegar and water, and I just eyeball this. I'll sprinkle a little bit in, taste it, sprinkle a little bit in until it's strong enough. Because the eggs are not going to be real strong flavored in this. So if this is extremely strong, you should be fine. Just going to sprinkle a little in there. Don't want to go too much. That way you can kind of control how it tastes. I'll stir it around with whatever I got on hand. Getting the eggs in the jars. So really what's going on here, just add half of the seasoning cup for the bottom or the whole thing. That's just how we feel like doing it this time. Throw some eggs in there. Throw about a handful of tomatoes, and I say a handful, maybe like scoop it with your fingers, not a big old palm, but just grab a pinch, throw it in there. However many jalapenos you want for it to be spicy. If you want it to be super hot, add a lot. If you want it to be kind of weak, don't add a lot. Each quart jar fits about 9 eggs. As far as the vegetables go, it's entirely up to you. Just make sure that you got these vegetables. This is the spicy salsa recipe. For this jar, we've put the vegetables all on the bottom, but you can change it up. You can put your eggs down and then throw some vegetables on top. You just want to make sure you don't want to add too many vegetables. This is about the maximum vegetables that you need, and it'll be right. Normally, the jar will look like this. This is the first one that we loaded. You throw in your seasoning, your eggs, a few vegetables, and then the rest of your eggs. Kind of put it all spread out. But for presentation purposes, that jar, we did the vegetables first. Here's our rag for wiping off the mouth of the jar. Place the seal. Don't put the lid on too tight. You put that ring on, and as soon as you feel resistance, stop. That's good. Just finger tight, not hand tight. Wow. I made just enough brine to fill up the 6 jars. That was 1 liter of water and 1 liter of vinegar, or 4.5 cups, about the same. That's what it was. That perfectly filled up those 6 jars. There's the jars. I would pick them all up and show you, but they're really hot to the touch because of that brine. As you can see, they look different because of how they were stacked, and that's perfectly okay. And by the end, they'll all look the same. They're so pretty at this point. Before long, all the seasonings get mixed in there, and the whole jar begins to look red. Water bath water is almost ready. Then we will water bath these bad boys for 15 minutes. It'll be done. Now we are going to start the water bath process. I had it super full on purpose so I can kind of control how high I want the water to be. I want to make sure it stays over the lid of the jars while not boiling over. Water bath is done. Now we are going to get our jars out. They are finished water bathing. And if everything went correctly, they should seal on their own. Now we've got 6 brand new jars of spicy salsa pickled eggs. Some of them look very different than the others, and that has to do with the way the food was stacked into the jar. There's nothing different or wrong with any of these 6 jars other than how the food was stacked in there. When I shake them around after they seal, they'll all look the same. Be sure to let your pickled eggs sit for 2 weeks to let your eggs absorb that seasoning and that brine. It's the next morning and they're all sealed. The lids have been tightened down completely. They're ready to be stored. So that was the process for spicy salsa. We finished those yesterday, and today we're going to do barbecue. This is all the eggs we're going to be doing for the barbecue. We're only going to do 2 jars.
I'm just kind of quick cooking these garlic, jalapenos, onions, and bell peppers just to kind of get them started cooking. I'm not going to get them all the way mushy.
So the barbecue one, we're not using these raw vegetables. We are sauteing them a little bit.
Just a little bit.
It complements the barbecue that much more.
I've already put in 1/2 cup. I'm going to put in another 1/2 cup of apple cider vinegar.
Barbecue ones work a little differently. Basically, it's just making barbecue sauce and your vegetables with a good portion of apple cider vinegar to help with the preserving. And that all is mixed in as your brine, basically.
Now we need 2 tablespoons of Worcestershire sauce.
Instead of having seasoning cups,
We're cooking it in there.
we put the seasonings in with the brine on this one. You're putting everything, from vegetables to your sauces to your seasonings in the same pot.
2 teaspoons of black pepper. The recipe doesn't call for it, but I want to add some smoky flavor. So I'm going to use liquid smoke. I'm just going to do about a teaspoon of that. No, I'm doubling it. I'm doing 2 teaspoons. And a little extra, apparently. Now, since we're not using as much vinegar as we normally do when we pickle stuff, just to be on the safe side, I'm going to add some citric acid to help, preserve it. Just going to do about a half a teaspoon. Half a tablespoon. Half a tablespoon. Alright, we're going to bring this to a boil. We've got all our ingredients in there. So now we're going to bring it to a boil. And we're going to let it boil for about 15 minutes. Well, we're going to let it simmer. Once it comes to a boil, we'll turn it down. Let it simmer for about 15 minutes. And then we'll try it and see if I want to add anything to it.
All right. Now we're going to taste it. I like it.
Really like it.
It's like barbecue sauce.
It's like a good barbecue.
Yeah. What you see on here is the recipe of what's in there. What's on here accounts for just 1 quart jar. And what's in there is double this because we're only going to make 2 jars today. So however many jars you plan to do, this is what you want to measure in.
And there may be some left over.
And there may be some left over. This just gives you a good idea of how much to make depending on how many jars you want to do. This is exactly what's in there. That's the recipe of barbecue.
And it's good.
Yes, and it tastes good.
There's a lot more to salsa ones.
It is, ain't it?
A lot more vegetables to cut up. It's a lot more prep work.
The spicy salsa ones are very high maintenance to prepare for. The barbecue flavor is just like...
I mean, you don't even have to have all them vegetables in there. I just used them because we had them cut up.
Right. Yeah, barbecue, you just throw it all in a pot, get it hot. There you go, water bath.
Yeah.
Put your eggs in it.
Yep. Yeah, okay, all 10 fit. Got 10 in each jar.
Wow.
Without all the vegetables, you can do that.
Yeah. If you're not worried about sealing them, then that's it. You're done. Let them sit for 2 weeks in the fridge, and the eggs will have absorbed all that flavor you put in there, and you'll have barbecue pickled eggs. But we're going to water bath them. We want to seal the jars so they can sit in the pantry. This recipe is still new to us. We're not entirely experienced doing the barbecue ones. So by all means, if you have some advice or better barbecue ideas, let me know in the comments below. We had just a little bit left over. That's going to happen. The recipe calls for 1 quart jar, and we doubled what the recipe says. So we ended up with our 2 quart jars, and that's the leftover barbecue sauce. We're going to just put that in a jar and use it for something else. We're going to do the little jar too, just because. There's the jar of barbecue sauce. They have been water bathed. Now they will seal, and we will have some barbecued pickled eggs ready to sit for 2 weeks, and then they will be ready to eat. That's it. It's the next day. They're perfectly sealed. Lids have been popped down on all 3 jars. Couldn't catch the pop down on camera. I was able to catch it with my last egg video, but not this one. If you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more. I've got more canned egg videos coming.
Yummy barbecue. Yummy, yummy. Yummy, yummy. Oh, you're still recording.
Oh,